Calvero is a washed-up comedian turned struggling alcoholic. As fate would have it, he ends up saving a beautiful young woman named Teresa after she attempts to end her own life. Spending time together, they both share in their combined struggles both as entertainers as well as their personal lives, all with the fear of being irrelevant to the world. Limelight is one of Charlie Chaplin's final films, and it deals with subjects such as relevancy, age, time, and overall trying to figure out where you fit into the world, especially if you're far past your prime. And as we look on the film, it presents the question, how can you accept the present? At the beginning of the film, we see Calvero after his prime. He's struggling, he's alcoholic, he's stumbling around. No longer the stage clown of the past, the one that people would laugh and howl at and find amusing beyond all measure. Now a disheveled man who really just gets from day to day through the lens of a bottle. And for some reason, an urge appears where he notices a smell, a weird smell emanating from Teresa's room. And sure enough, she tried gassing herself and ending her own life. Quick to action, he breaks down the door, carries Teresa, goes and gets a doctor, and tries to take care of her. Essentially, she is a stranger to him, and he unfortunately ends up being burdened with her, but in a good way, because it allows him an opportunity to see things through a new lens. And the mystery begins of why she would kill herself. The doctor explains to him how to help her with her treatments, and that she will be bedridden for a while. She finds that she's paralyzed from the waist down, and feels that life isn't worth living, and she keeps repeating this phrase of life not being worth it, and not really understanding why she's still here, and that he shouldn't have saved her. But Calvero was at the top. He did experience the highs of enjoyment, of being praised for his craft. We see glimpses of it in his dreams, but we never really see the true version of him. And we find out more about Teresa and find out that the whole reason why she tried to do what she did was because she didn't think she was a good enough dancer. She wanted to be a dancer, world-renowned, but for some reason she kept struggling. She knew she was good, but she didn't see the world reciprocating her feelings. And Calvero helps her craft the confidence within herself by seeing a reflection of himself in her. They're both broken, but unlike Teresa, he sees the potential that she could be, not the version that she sees herself as, a failure. That's how Calvero sees himself. Over time, Calvero keeps trying to look for work. Being a struggling stage clown, they're not in demand at all. Many people would point out that he was better drunk than he was sober, and that could be one of the major reasons why he tries to stay drunk despite his health risks telling him he should not. And every agency he goes to rejects him. Not only do they not want him, they almost despise him, as if he's a blight on their culture of whatever is currently going on. And at the same time, instead of hating on himself, finding out that her paralysis is based off of fear and not off of an actual illness, has centered all of his goals on making Teresa not only walk again, he wants to help her dance. He wants her to achieve her goals, and hopefully, in doing so, help him achieve his own goals. It's somewhat of a selfish outlook, but in the reality of it, he just wants to see a reason to keep going, because the world doesn't want him to anymore. As the movie goes on, Teresa ends up becoming a huge success, getting roles in productions and stage things, and through her connections, Calvero very slowly and almost hesitantly is allowed an opportunity to make people happy, fill up a show for him. But unfortunately, it's not good. His jokes don't land. His rhythms are off. He's not fun to watch. Whatever the reason being, the people just don't click with him. And because of that, he just goes back to the way he was at the beginning of the movie, starting to drink over and over again. Earlier in the film, Teresa tells a story about a handsome young musician who worked above a paper shop she used to work at. She fell in love with him, and she has dreams about seeing him again and running off and having a future with him. And those were just fleeting hopes and fancies. But as fate would have it, that very same musician, named Neville, ends up being the composer of an upcoming play that she just so happened to have gotten the role for. And not only that, she's somehow able to get Calvero into the role. And Calvero sees Neville and sees Teresa, puts his own selfishness aside and wants them to be happy together. But despite whatever his wants are, the fact remains Teresa wants to be with Calvero. She would rather stay comfortable with Calvero than risk the failure of possibly ending her life, so to speak. Maybe not literally, but metaphorically, having her career and her dreams shattered. Rather than take the risk, she would rather be comfortable. And so Calvero promises to do the role under the condition that the person does a concert for him, because the man in charge is a giant fan of Calvero. And this leads us to the conclusion of the film. As we see in the play that Teresa is in, she starts to experience in the middle of the premiere stage fright again. Stage paralysis, her legs shaking in fear of possibly losing what she has, everything crumbling around her. Calvero, despite his health issues, he yells at her and says, "You are being foolish, you are merely afraid, and it is halting you from achieving your dreams." And he slaps her, not in a way to get her in pain, but in a way to get her to realize the irrationality of her actions. And so she dances her heart out. She does an amazingly beautiful job. And Calvero in the play plays a harlequin, a old school clown, but not for joking purposes, to bring a softness to the concept of death in the setting of the play. Very much reflective of Calvero himself, not only facing death and mortality, but being a clown, but not quite a clown anymore. At the benefits show for Calvero, the crowd is packed, awaiting Calvero, awaiting his performance, his fun-loving persona of the clown that he's known for. And not only do they see him, but along with him is also he's reunited with his old partner, ironically played by Buster Keaton, who was, for all intents and purposes, Charlie Chaplin's ultimate rival in the movie screen. Calvero gives a giant triumphant performance, and in the middle of the final routine, he stumbles into a drum, and in the middle of stumbling into it, he suffers a heart attack. And Teresa is worried about him, and he said he'll be fine. The doctors want to rush him to the hospital, but he says no. He wants to stay where he is, by the sidelines, as the clown, watching the future that is Teresa on stage, dancing beautifully, until the very end. And the movie ends with Teresa finally achieving her goals of being a well-renowned, loved dancer, and Calvero having one last show. So, how can you accept the present? When we look at the scope of the film, and not just the film itself, but Charlie Chaplin as an individual, one of the greatest filmmakers and actors of all time, he was shackled to the character of the tramp for his entire career. No matter what he did, no matter how much he tried to compose, direct, write, craft, he was always bound by the character of the tramp. It was his synonymous character, just as certain actors are bound by other characters that are very, very famous. But there comes a time in each of our lives, if we're so lucky to reach it, where we look back and go, is my time over? And it's the hardest pill to swallow, the acceptance of your prime being ended. Because you feel a sense of worth, that you can still go, that you can keep trying, that you can keep going forward, and sometimes you just can't. The world changes, time changes us, and sometimes it's things beyond our control. But I think the key to really understanding what it is to accept the present is to acknowledge it, to realize that the present isn't just a thing that exists. The present is a thing that is constantly moving, ever changing. Some of us can change with it, some of us can't. And it's perfectly normal. But the one thing you should not do is what Teresa did. She feared the present. She feared the reality, the what if, the possibility of failure. And that is what determines if you're able to survive in the present, either doing something you love or simply just existing. Your acceptance of the present is just as important, if not more important, as your acceptance of yourself in the present. But in the end, these aren't answers, they're hypotheticals.
All systems are green. Launch clearance has been granted.
Yes, we're finally going to the galactic ley line!
Get the hell out of my way!
Woo!